Hey, this is our real thoughts for Quest for Camelot. This was surprisingly, I get a lot of people like still talking about the review, and I think it's a good review, but I think people just have this fascination with this movie. Like they know it's bad, but it was such a strange, kind of like the same thing with Swan Princess. You know, it's like yeah, they know it's bad, but it was something else so few that you saw back then, an animated film, a hand-drawn animated film that wasn't Disney. And yet was still kind of trying to look like Disney, but be a little different. And, like, unlike Don Bluth, Warner Bros. Could never quite pull it off.
I always felt Disney light. There was something about the color schemes and the animation.
I actually like the color.
Movies.
I like
really?
it, but no, I
I
love the color. No, you know what? Whenever they were outside and there was a blue sky, I loved it. In both Swan Princess and Quest for Camelot. Actually, even Quest for Camelot, I'll argue the color's okay.
That always felt kind of drab to me, a little, and sometimes the lines seem like a little too clean. I don't know. There's something off about it. I can't pinpoint what the problem is because I'm not an animator myself. But
well, I think because something we both really strongly agreed on in Swan Princess is that the opening song with the two kids is great because
that was the only good part of that movie,
and because it's doing its own thing and it's playing to what Warner Brothers does best. It does slapstick and comedy very well, and then when they grow up into Diet Disney, it's like, oh shit. And this, it's funny because the slapstick is not very good, but the story, honestly, you're telling me the story. If you took out Arthur, like, hey, this is Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and stuff, like, story-wise, I kind of be like, well, okay, for that time period, this would kind of be interesting. But it's
the concept of the blind knight, I think, is...
Yeah, or even, I mean, at the time, a girl wanting to be a knight was like, a little bit, so it's like, what I mean,
honestly,
now
that didn't bother... The funny thing is, on paper, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Like, the girl wanting to become a knight and the blind knight, I'm like, there's something there.
Yeah, there's a good idea.
That can make this work. It just, I
even
guess,
the two-headed dragon is not a bad idea.
Okay.
No, for a comic relief, if it was done right, it wouldn't be a bad
There's just something about
relief.
the execution of the way it all came together. I'm like, this did not work at all.
And here's the funny thing, too. I was looking at, I sort of badmouthed the songs in it, and the more I thought about it, I was like, well, the prayer is like a world-famous song now, not because of the movie, clearly, but because Josh Groban and all these other people went and did it and sung it in Italian and stuff like that. The opening song is actually pretty nice. The one the knights sing and stuff, it has sort of like this nice Celtic feel to it. And even elements of I Stand Alone, even though like a lot of the lyrics aren't that good and the guy sounds like a pop singer and stuff, like it kind of isn't that bad. And I like the idea of a song sort of glorifying the fact that sometimes it's okay to do something on your own. Everything is teamwork and it's got to be, and that's great, but we've gotten such a big focus on that once in a while, you know what? If someone just wants to do something on their own, that's okay sometimes. And even in the movie, it comes around to he goes too far and he's like, I cannot be part of that world,
I just don't know why you needed songs.
It was thrown in at the last minute,
That's always my problem, particularly with the Warner Brother ones are trying so hard to be Disney. When I'm just like, if you just focused on telling your story without trying to be Disney, without being like, we need a two-headed dragon comic relief, we need songs, film might have come out better. The biggest weak link, like as much as the comic relief doesn't do anything for me, and the songs are okay, but I don't think it needed it. It's the villain.
The villain. What a waste of Gary Oldman. What a guy who can do so many great voices and is such a great actor and just clearly can't sing. So we're going to have you sing in this. Oh, dude.
The ogre's butt. That's the only thing I remember from him in that movie, was just saying the ogre's butt.
And like, out of all the Knights of the Round Table, here's just this green giant monster. Like, I wonder which one of them is going to be the Judas.
I just looked at it, I was like, who invited him?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I kind of give them credit even though, like, the girl, I call her a girl, I'm assuming she's supposed to be 16 in this.
I thought she was like that, because she looks like Belle. Like they all look kind of like they all have that vague Disney quality. So I assume she was like Belle's age. I was like anywhere from 16 to 20.
Wait, no, but that's what's fun. Yeah, even like Belle to me like looked older. Like and
Belle to me always looked like early
older.
20s.
Yeah, that's what she looks like.
I always
to me
figured
too.
Belle was like 18.
Yeah,
maybe.
but I think in this one I'm assuming she's like 16 or something like that. Even though it's clearly ripping off Belle, it's like it was a decent rip. Like, okay, that kind of looks like, the Disney style. So, okay, I'll, like, that. She actually kind of moved and talked okay. And then, like...
I kind of, you know what it was? I kind of felt like I was watching some offshoot of Gummy Bears. Like, the medieval time setting, the vague Disney look.
Yeah,
like, that was part of my
that
problem.
if they got that right. And, but then, like, the Chris Elway's character, like, I don't know, there's times especially...
Carrie Elways?
Yeah, what'd I say, Chris? Sorry, my bad.
I stopped you before you created another comment disaster.
Yes. So anyway, when he's going up against, like, the little axe chicken played by Ving Rhames, it's one of those things where he kind of looks at him.
Shut the fuck up.
He looks at him straight on, and, like, I can't explain, like, the lips are kind of pointy, and the eyebrows are a little weird, and it's like, clearly, if they were looking to rip something off, they weren't ripping it off well. And again, just the initial design of this guy with, like, the long yellow hair and sort of the cane and stuff like that, like, is fine in thought, but then when they actually draw it, they didn't quite get the face right, from certain angles. And, yeah, the biggest thing that I think everyone's always like, like the joke they remember the most is honestly kind of my smallest complaint in the movie is that they don't explain enough. I do the big explain thing, and honestly, that's probably the least of the problems. It just sort of turned into a running joke.
I remember back in the day, though, so many people wasting so many words on forums trying to explain it to you.
Oh, really? Oh, see, now that's hilarious, because everyone puts that line out.
On our own forums, like, there was you obviously didn't watch the movie. There would be like 12 paragraphs. I'm like, you obviously watched this movie way too
many
much.
times.
Like,
no, that's the same thing with It, though. Like, when I was talking about the problem, everyone's like, you son of a bitch, this is everything wrong, and nobody's gonna watch this now, they're all gonna hate you, and like, I think on YouTube it's like the 5th most watched Nostalgia Critic video.
Well, it's always the ones that people complain about the most that get the most hits.
Yeah, maybe they're coming back to complain, I don't know. Or
I'll
maybe
show
just
you,
really...
I'll watch it a second time.
Or just really, the majority don't care, and they're just there to laugh and have fun.
You mean there's a very vocal minority?
Weird, right? But yeah, but that element of where not explaining how the Enchanted Forest really works, or even like how little of like the ogre there is, and like he's in there for a split second and he looks awful, and it's like, but what was even his motivation or whatever? I mean, was there a motivation? All this stuff honestly did not bother me that much as like it just seemed like very clumsily recycled Disney trying to be different.
You know what it is? It felt like the entire script was constructed of scenes cut from other Disney films. Like, this was Disney cutting room floor, and somebody from Warner Brothers snuck in, swept it up, and is just like, let's construct a movie out of
the deleted scenes of Disney.
Yeah, like,
actually.
Every scene feels like a lesser scene in a Disney movie that would have been cut.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is. Yeah, I say to myself, there has to be...
And there's been I'm not saying this, that we've seen way worse.
Oh, yeah.
There's another one. I don't know if this would be my top 20, but this would be in the upper echelons of things that I've watched. I'm like, okay, this isn't the worst thing ever. Like, there's been a lot worse than this, but it...
And like I said, I mean, I think I'm just always going to have a soft spot for Warner Bros. Animation, even when they're awful. It's just Warner Bros. Animation. I can't help it.
What if they did, Mask of the Phantasm and...
Iron Giant.
That's the one. I was like, I knew there was another one that was really, really good.
Wait,
but outside of that, I'm trying to think, were there any that were really good?
Iron Giant is a great example of having a Disney-ish, but it's clearly Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers makes it their own, and that's why I like the opening of Swan Princess, because at first you think they're going to do that, and then they don't.
Definitely not Swan Princess. We're Back a WB...
No, I don't think so. I could be wrong. It doesn't look like War, but it's not bad animation, actually.
I'm not just talking about the animation, but like the problem is when you say animation, you also need a plot.
Now is that We're Back? I forget.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of all the ones he did.
We're not sure, so you don't need to clarify. But yeah, I think this is one of those.
If we can't think of them.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah,
but yeah, and this was one of those I think was pushed relatively hard back then in terms of like it was in like I think there was like a Wendy's Happy Meal or something like that.
Thumbelina. Wasn't that?
Yeah, that's kind of Don Bluth, and Don Bluth sort of his own entity. Even like the bad
wasn't
stuff.
Wasn't he doing it for Warner Brothers?
Yeah, no. Most of his stuff was either Warner Brothers or 20th Century. But yeah, that's one of those where it's like Bluth is almost his separate entity. I don't necessarily. I mean, it is Warner Brothers, but I don't necessarily count it as Warner Brothers.
You don't think Brad Bird is with Iron Giant?
Brad Bird has done enough different stuff that I sort of go. I mean, now he's doing live action stuff. He's not like pinpointed this one thing. Where Don Bluth, you sort of got his crazy early good stuff and then his crazy bad later stuff. And it's one of those things where it's just sort of like this isn't Warner Brothers. You know, it's like where I can see, yeah, Brad Bird mostly owned Iron Giant, but you could clearly tell this is Warner Brothers Animation, where with Don Bluth, that's not Warner Brothers Animation, that is Don Bluth making a film under Warner Brothers.
Space Jam.
Fuck yeah, of course. But again, great animation in Space Jam, you know. So I always have like this fondness of that Warner Bros. Animation because I love it when they do comedy and they can make comedy look beautiful. I mean, as bad as we say Space Jam is, it's still the Looney Tunes looking probably the best they've ever looked in that movie. I mean, I've never seen
you like the animation for it.
Yeah.
Plot?
Oh, any of the Warner Brothers? Not, like I said, I think I can count 2 or 3 for Warner Brothers. But some of them have good elements, and even with this one, I'd argue, like, there's ideas for good elements in there. They just never quite... It's probably too rushed, would be my guess. I mean, the script clearly needs a rewrite. You know...
I think that's that whole ripping off Disney thing. I think there was probably studio interference, and they're like, no, hit all of these notes.
Yeah.
We have to compete with Disney. And that probably just derailed anybody involved with it. Like, well, now we're serving 2 masters. We wanted to tell a story, but now we have to make a Disney movie.
And, you know, I don't know what it is. I feel like with a lot of these films, like, you know, especially with the Warner Brothers and stuff, and even just kind of other action films, you would see, like, when they get to the end and they get to the big climax and stuff, even Disney, for the most part, at their worst, had what kind of felt like an epic climax to their films, and something about
they do know how to end their films even in their lesser ones.
And there's something about, you know, and even sort of the establishment of the characters and stuff, and I'm saying to myself, why couldn't these other films do that? Because I'm looking at these climaxes, I'm like,
think about
these
the
are
only
just
2
such small, not interesting climaxes.
Think about the only 2 we like. Mask of the Phantasm, Joker laughing in front of the fire and disappearing, climax, and then Iron Giant, you know,
the giant robot going around blowing shit up and stuff. He has to, you know, well, I won't give away the ending, but it's a big epic climax. I think the closest, maybe just an idea, maybe Swan Princess, where he's fighting a big monster and it's the bad guy, but took that from Sleeping Beauty. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I sort of say to myself, why can't, you know, maybe because I can't vocally say what the secret formula is or whatever, but yeah, I sort of say, how can't they get to this level of epicness, and Disney can hit it so easily most of the time.
Well,
I mean, they just sort of know, like, okay, this needs to feel like a big story, even if it's not working, it needs to feel big.
There's 2 obvious answers to that. For one thing, that's Disney's thing. They've had decades of experience doing it.
Warner Brothers is pretty new to the animated film.
Warner Brothers, they've always been the opposite. They were vaudeville. They were, you know, Bugs Bunny, Roadrunner, slapstick. And yeah, it's a case of them not having the experience to do it. And I think it's the case of, what do you think is going to turn out better? Here, I have a great idea for an original idea that I want to do and I have a lot of passion for it. All right, that's fine. Or here, rip this off.
Yeah.
If you tell somebody to just rip it off,
you know, I mean, I sort of say to myself, how could they not quite get... You know, like, Anastasia was obviously... it was Bluth trying to do a Disney ripoff. I mean, I don't even know if he would deny it. I mean, everyone could kind of see it, which was kind of fine, because we wanted a little bit more variety.
There's a difference, though.
No, but even then, like, everything felt like it looked like Disney, and in some points it even kind of did stuff that's like, well, that's kind of big like Disney, but it still never quite got it, and it felt like it was a ripoff.
correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Bluth work for Disney at one point?
Good point.
He worked for
And he
Disney at
left,
one point, and B, that's what Bluth has done. Like, Bluth is, I mean, we complain about some of his later movies, but I mean, you won't get any denial out of us that Bluth is a genius and a master.
Yeah, on top, you know,
He is one of the great masters of animation. You're saying, well, why could Bluth do it? Because he's Don Bluth.
Yeah.
He's Don fucking Bluth.
You know, no, but okay.
And you know, Secret of Nim and American Tail, Land Before Time. I'm like,
these were big movies. Even
we got some lesser products later, but if you know they gave him the money and he's like, do Disney, I could imagine he could do it in his sleep.
You know, and he really kind of did too, because I'm thinking Land Before Time was like, you know, it felt like a Disney film, and it was better than the Disney film.
It felt like
it
felt like it was Bambi. It's dinosaur Bambi.
Yeah, no, but even the climax to that
and
film,
it's
when
great.
it was done,
I mean, it's a great movie.
Yeah, when you're done, you just feel like, oh man, you just saw an epic story. Even if it's about these young little characters. And I remember it came out the same time as Oliver and Company, and I'm like, well, why is it the non-Disney film was more of a Disney film than the actual Disney film? And that's when Disney was starting to lose its footing and get it back. But yeah, and I always sort of wonder, it's like, I just sort of got the idea, like this feel, you know, even if it didn't work, you could still sort of catch this feel, like what they told Larry Nimoy with, when he did Star Trek 3, they said, make it operatic, make it big, make it epic. And even if you don't like the film, it is that. It's a big, operatic film.
There's one other thing I think we also have to remember, A, the dark power of Eisner, you know, behind your back, but B, Disney, that company's a monster. I mean, it's huge, literally, I think Disney has a Scrooge McDuck vault. Just full of money, and I think the CEOs, like, dive in it every evening, and, like, so you have this...
I'm sure that is entirely true.
You have this immense power behind you, and, you know, people are like, well, Warner Brothers is huge, too, and they are...
Not like Disney.
No, even, let's even assume that they're both the same size. Time Warner and Disney, like, they're both huge companies, and they both have a ton of money and power behind them. But Warner Brothers is not throwing all their effort into animation. That's what Disney was. That's what Disney is. Warner Brothers' animation was always a little more on the cheap, a little more vaudevillian. I think when they did it, when they tried to break into film animation, I don't think their heart was in it. I think that was always the thing. I think they thought they could kind of like half-ass in here, we'll throw a little money this way, throw a little money that to see if anything sticks. But if you're not just going to invest your all into it, I think that was also part of Warner Brothers' problems. The projects always felt, and it's not for the people that worked on it. I think the people who worked on it probably threw as much as they could into it, but they always felt kind of cheap. Like there was no real backing behind it. Like they were never quite sure this was going to work.
I don't think there's ever quite... I mean, nowadays, really, because there is just so much media everywhere, you have to try... and make you have to take risks with your idea. And we're seeing a lot of that happening with movies and TVs and kid shows as well. And a lot of them are paying off. And so nowadays, the idea of taking a risk or doing something different is not that strange. Back then, it really was, because it was such a fearful thing to try and do, especially in the early 90s and late 80s, at least for kids' entertainment. So when Disney was down for a while... sort of the late 70s and 80s, that's when Bluth came in, these other animation studios, and they were doing decent. They were actually doing okay. I think that's when Disney's like, we gotta get our shit back, and we gotta, you know, Katzenberg.
Oh, and they did.
Eisner and stuff. Yeah, so it's...
Eisner lived long enough to see himself become the villain in that case.
But yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like when they do it, it's like it comes... it comes back and it works. But yeah, this idea of sort of taking risks back then was not a thing. It was try to do what everyone else was doing. And it is nice now to see
and the only
that
two
they can
risks,
try and do
the only two
different
risks
things.
that worked was Mask of the Phantasm and the Iron Giant.
Which neither were financial hits.
Yeah, and they both felt like risks.
Yeah.
And they didn't pay off. So I'm sure they were, at the time, I mean, now we regard them as classics, but... You know, the Mask of the... Okay, I'm going to say this about Mask of the Phantasm.
Say it! Put it out there!
I swear to God, I saw ads for that movie, and 1 week later it was gone. And I'm like, where the fuck did it go? Because I wanted to see that movie when it came out, and I never could. I could only see it on video. And I don't know, like, I think I think this is part of what I was saying. I think Warner Brothers just kind of, like, pulled it. Like, I was going to do it, just pull it. Like, and if you second guess yourself, I think that's part of the problem.
You know, the advertising, honestly, they did not... I do remember seeing the commercials everywhere, but they didn't make it that interesting. You see Batman looking behind a corner and, like, the Phantasm, like, woohoo, and going away. Sometimes the Joker would laugh. Like, that was about it.
I'm just saying, we were in high school... And we were off for Christmas break, and I wanted to see it sometime over Christmas break. Didn't get a chance the first week of Christmas break.
It wasn't high school for me, I was middle school.
Yeah, well, on the second week of Christmas break, I just remember, like, nobody had it. And I'm like, what the hell happened here?
No, you know what, too? I remember when it came out on VHS, I would have my friends over, and we would watch it, and all of them loved it, and they said, well, why didn't this film do well in the theater? And I always said, did you see it? No. That's why. You know.
Could you see it, though? That's my question.
I don't know. I do kind of remember it being around... Who wants to see a Batman movie around Christmas? That's one of the reasons... Oh, no, Batman Returns was centered around Christmas, and that didn't do so
well. That was a summer movie, though.
Yeah, exactly. So that was even more confusing.
But, yeah, I always felt that, and even Quest for Camelot and Swan Princess, all these, that it never had the trust from corporate behind it. Mm-hmm. I always felt like this was almost a lark for them... And that they were always nervous.
It was a little experiment to see. Let's see.
It was always like testing the waters, and it always felt like even in the advertisements there was this almost sly wink, like, "Yeah, we know you're not." Like the ads, because
maybe you'll check it out. Be nice.
You see Disney ads, and they market it as an event.
Yeah,
it's always like this big event. And I remember the ads for like Quest for Camelot and all the other films. They always just felt like, yeah. See this.
If you got some time, it'd be nice, but it's like, if you got some time, maybe check out Swan Princess, or you know what? There's the fucking Lion King, that's grand and epic, and I mean, I think you're kind of right. They never dedicated, like, everything to it feels like. But
turns out it wasn't that great of a movie anyway.
Yeah, so I mean, that makes a huge difference, but still. I think we talked about everything about the movie except the actual movie, the more I think about it.
There's not much to talk about.
Yeah, kind of true. We sort of got it all out in the beginning. But, so there you go. That's about sort of a commentary.
It's not the worst thing ever, but yeah, I realize there's some sort of cult following around it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, and the actual explanation part is not like the biggest problem for me. It's just kind of clumsy and stuff, though. There is a lot of stuff that doesn't make that much sense.
Looked great on paper. Didn't execute.
Yeah. Looked good on paper, but then when you had to animate the paper, put a lot of them together, that's where it kind of fell apart. There it is. We'll see you in the next one. Later.